Morning. I'm good. Yes, how are you? Okay. Okay, I'm trying to load up my computer to find your station so I can kind of monitor, but we're talking to Gus James at WSTX FM in the Virgin Islands. Going to go live here to give an update on the aftermath of the earthquake of 3/11 and the tsunami and the resulting nuclear crisis at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. About ready to go on live here to do a live Japan Journal broadcast and simulcast with WSTX FM. Good day, Gus. How are you, my friend? Greetings to him as well from Japan here. I'm calling from Shizuoka Prefecture in the center of Japan, as you know, where I reside. And while we are out of harm's way here, we've got a very dangerous situation that is trying to be dealt with. You know, the Hamaoka nuclear power plant is just 20 minutes from my door. It would be to the southeast of us, toward the ocean. So we here at Japan Journal are inland. My complex is inland, about 25 minutes drive. But in the aftermath of what happened at Fukushima, the concern and focus now is on prevention of a similar crisis happening here at Japan's largest nuclear power facility in Shizuoka Prefecture. Actually, it's the largest one in Japan with 5 nuclear reactors here and another one poised to be built at the Hamaoka nuclear power plant. We just had a massive rally and march, protest march on Sunday in Shizuoka. You know, the Japanese tend not to do this kind of thing, so it's catching on. People are becoming concerned, looking toward preventive measures to keep this thing from happening again. Of course, the recovery and the rebuilding and the enduring of what happened is ongoing. But now all eyes are on this Hamaoka nuclear power plant here in Japan. People from all over are starting to express themselves in a manner that's not seen so often in Japan, as you know.
Good day, everyone, and welcome once again to this edition of Japan Journal. We're coming to you live from Shizuoka City in Aoba.
Absolutely. Well, Gus, as I just mentioned to you about the protest demonstration that we had this past Sunday, that is the tip of the iceberg in my estimation. While only 1,000 people showed up by Western standards, that's a small amount of people to react to a crisis of this nature, but it is the tip of the iceberg, I believe, and I think what we're going to see in the days... I think it's the tip of the iceberg. What we're going to see in the days ahead is an increasing outpouring of outrage and concern publicly on the part of Japanese who will conduct parades and massive demonstrations to express their concern about the proliferation of nuclear power plants in Japan and the dependence on nuclear energy as a resource. Well, I'll tell you, let me describe it like this. For the first time, it is on the table to be discussed and to be debated. And the groundswell of this discussion is coming now from your everyday citizen who is outraged and concerned about the handling of the situation in Fukushima with the Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, the communication, the information coming rather sluggishly from the Japanese government, and people are concerned, they're afraid, and they're reconsidering their acceptance of nuclear energy as a power source here in Japan for the last 40 years. So I would say it's definitely something that's on the table, and people are now starting to focus on alternative energy resources And Japan is very innovative, as you know, technologically speaking, and also in terms of lifestyle. They're starting to look at solar energy, wind energy, and hydro energy as alternative resources to this nuclear power energy source.
Shut it down. Shut it down.
Yes, gaijin, or outside people, outside nation people. That's what they call us here, Absolutely, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's what makes living here easy as a foreigner, because there's no doubt about the role that you play here. You're either Japanese here or you're not. So if you're not, you're in a large minority group called the gaijin, or gaikokujin is the proper term for that, which means foreigner, basically translated. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nationality trumps race, ethnicity, and all other things, gender. Because in the eyes of the Japanese, as a non-Japanese, you're in that big group called the gaikokujin, or foreigner. Okay, so to answer your question, Gus, I'm active, and you know of my activism with regard to the shutting down of the Hamaoka nuclear power plant, simply because I'm a media professional and I'm more visible. I have used the social media to disseminate information regarding this growing movement here in Japan to find alternative energy sources. And what makes this particularly special for me as a foreign person and as a media professional, this could be the largest story of my 43-year career, Gus, simply because it involves me directly. This dangerous plant sits on an earthquake fault that is waiting to happen. The Tokai area, the Shizuoka area, is one of the major faults in Japan. And as with most other nuclear power plants in Japan, they are all built on earthquake faults. So this is why we have the situation. And so that is now being reconsidered. People are starting to look back and rethink what exactly happened in the history of the development of these nuclear power plants in Japan that would have allowed the authorities to allow them to be built and constructed in Japan to begin with, the world's most active volcano and seismic nation in the world, perhaps. Every day, Gus, they had more than 500 aftershocks from 3/11 to some degree or another. A good percentage of them over a magnitude of 5 on the Richter scale. So, looking back in retrospect, it's pure insanity for them to have constructed these nuclear power plants on a perimeter around this entire island. So you've got more than 52 of them, which is like the third largest amount of such plants among major industrialized nations in the world. Now we can get into the background of this. You know, as a journalist, there's a lot behind the story. If you look back in history, you've got to look at what happened when General Electric, who constructed most of these plants, sold the Japanese what people are now calling a bill of goods back during the 70s and even before. You know, the oil shock of the 70s caused Japan to rethink their entire energy source, and this is one of the things that encouraged them or convinced them to go with the nuclear activity, nuclear generated power. So people are starting to really look back and see exactly where Japan may have gone wrong. Yes. Right. That's right. And you do a seismic assessment as well. Yes, but now, and I do remember those protests, and now people like yourself are being looked upon as geniuses for having the foresight to predict and protest this kind of proliferation. It's just pure nonsense when you look at it. But things where people became pacified. I mean, there were no problems, and until there is a crisis to this extent, then we start waking up and looking at these issues. So that's the big news right now, Gus. And as I said, as we speak, I'm currently editing the second episode of a series of documentaries on this story, and it will be visible on my Facebook and on my YouTube channel. If you go to Towton Media, just keyword search that on YouTube, and you'll be able to see this featured report coming up in a couple of days. So. Yes, yes. Go to YouTube.com, and the channel name is username is Towton Media, Totown Media, all one word. Okay, my company name is Totown Communications Limited, and the keyword would be the company name, Towton Media. And you'll see over 150 videos there, but the most current one would be the featured one on the channel. So please watch for that, and please give us international support, because Gus, as you know, from having lived here, things move a lot faster when pressure comes from outside of Japan. That's right, and it's your today, but my yesterday, and we our protest march kind of tried to coincide with that, and if you look back at Chernobyl, that's still an ongoing crisis. They put sand and cement on it to contain the dissemination of radiation, but you cannot kill plutonium. It's got a shelf life of what? You're the physicist, you're the engineer, thousands of years? Half-life. And so what we're dealing with here in the Fukushima area, do you know that there are trace amounts of cesium-137 in the atmosphere in the United States? It's showing up in milk, and for them not to try to suppress the alarm and the outrage here in Tokyo, which is downwind of the Fukushima plant, you've got an ongoing situation to a degree that we know not what, clearly.
On this beautiful Sunday afternoon, and you hear the people in Japanese calling for
Absolutely.
the shutdown. Stop the proliferation of nuclear power plants in Japan. Stick and say that's going to go away. Coming back to you with more on the
We're at the very beginning of it, in my estimation. We don't know the extent to which this and how far this will impact life in Japan and potentially life on this planet. It is something that is in a constant state of flux right now, which is why information is hard to come by. The real source of the information are the TEPCO employees who are on the ground at the plant. And let me just give you a brief update of where we stand, because you know from watching my reports, I was going live on my Ustream broadcast almost daily for a month. And now the reports are slowing coming. People are starting to return back to their normal way of life. But there is a underscored psychological kind of a depression that's going on among a lot of people. Now, you mentioned foreigners. Most of the artists who I represent in my business who live in Tokyo, a lot of them are going home. A lot of them are here but confused as to what to do. It's created a depressive kind of environment in Tokyo, which used to be one of the most active, thriving communities on the planet. The lights are at half force now to do power sharing. It's just got it's made an incredible psychological impact, and it's a phenomenon that we haven't seen. It's a town in mourning. And you've got confused people, you've got people who on the one hand are going on with their daily lives because life in fact must go on. But then when you have time to give pause and think about it, the first thing you think about are the thousands of people who are still in gymnasiums and community halls all over Japan, sleeping on futons, sharing private facilities with a shortage of food and water. These things are incomprehensible. It's hard to wrap your mind around it, and you know, our psychology, our natural tendency is to forget so that we can move on and be functional. We're still in the midst of this thing, very much so. Absolutely. It is, listen, I've never done war coverage, but this is as close to it as I probably will ever get, and it is possibly potentially more devastating than war. Yes. Let me answer it like this. I'm trained to be an observer. I'm trained to be objective, and I'm trained to gather information and disseminate it so that the listener and the consumer of that information can make a decision on his own. But I found myself in the middle of this story having to try to analyze this for myself and for my own family and for my friends and loved ones who are in harm's way. Here's the situation. I hear a lot of complaints from the West. Sometimes people from outside of Japan are expressing more outrage than you hear from within Japan. So it's a bit remarkable to us. Because what we know is, and I do defend the Japanese government and the Japanese people, you'll find no other culture that will respond faster, coexist better, contribute and sacrifice and compromise themselves to help their fellow man than the Japanese people. I've got to say that. I've got to go on record with that. So there's an outpouring of concern. There's an outpouring of volunteerism. And the government is doing the best they can under the circumstances. And if you want to criticize them, the old adage is, take a walk in their shoes. What would you do in an unprecedented natural disaster, a nuclear crisis that we're faced with right now? It's just hard to get your head around it. And they're doing whatever they humanly possibly can. And by the way, they are very appreciative of the financial support, the technological support from major industrialized nations and other third world nations from all over the world that have shown up and stepped up to help this situation. Just unprecedented. That's absolutely. And the United States has stepped up. I mean, you know, Japan is still occupied after World War II. They've never been unoccupied in a sense. I mean, but it's the greatest bilateral relationship of all diplomatic relationships in the world between the U.S. and Japan, and there are military bases all around this island. Those resources have been made available. President Obama has authorized by any means and to any degree necessary to support the recovery of bodies, the cleanup of rubble, the evacuation, any support that they can. You've got military people on the ground along with the Japanese defense forces working day and night to get ahead of this situation. And it's going to take years. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, you look at the images back there. I have yet to go to ground zero, and don't think I want to just yet until this thing settles down. But they're now increasing or expanding the perimeters beyond which you cannot go. The people are blocked from entering them. But some independent journalists have made their way to ground zero and have recorded it on video. And if you see the scenes, it is surreal. You've got dogs still chained to fences. You've got lights, street lights on, but nobody's home. It is surreal. It's like something out of a science fiction movie. Absolutely, and now you've got fiction. Hollywood could not have written this script. Let me put it like that. Yeah. Yes. That's right. Well, we've got enough on our hands dealing with fission that is trying to be used for industrial purposes, and here's something else. I mean, people have gone to sleep on this thing. I mean, it is science. We all studied it in school to some extent. Fairly new science in our lifetime, but France is incredibly active in the business of nuclear energy. Probably more so than any other nation. The head of state, Sarkozy, was the first dignitary to set foot in Japan after 3/11. And he had good reason to be here because Japan's one of his biggest customers. So when you look at the corporate aspect of this thing, that's big business. It has become big business. And now people are starting to think, oh my gosh, what are the economic implications of this thing in terms of the dissemination and the proliferation of this industry of nuclear energy, nuclear generated energy. You know, these plants are simply big steamships. I mean, all the nuclear fission does is heat water that drives steam to turn turbines, which generates electricity. It's as simple as that. It's not rocket science, you know. Absolutely. That's right. Absolutely. But it's dangerous stuff if it gets out of control. Let me correct you. Don't stop with Tokyo. The impact is felt nationwide here, in small ways, but increasing ways, and it'll be felt globally. Look, you're trying to determine the impact of the physical impact on human life. We're trying to measure the potential impact of contaminated dissemination of what in the Japanese word is hoshasen, which is radiation. But people are just now starting to try to project the economic impact of this thing, and already the recovery is projected over a period of 10 years into the billions of yen, trillions of US dollars. Now, distribution is sluggish. I run a restaurant and a bar, as you know, and I can't get my Heineken draft beer because the plant that distributed it and manufactured and brewed it was just downline of Fukushima, and it's shut down. So it's affected my small business already. Power sharing. For the first time since World War II, you're having rolling or rotating blackouts in the major area of the Tokyo Electric Power Company. We're in central Japan, and it is the Chubu Electric Power Company that we're now dealing with to shut down the Hamaoka plant, which is poised to be another disaster in the making. So everything has its impact and effect on everyday life in Japan, yet and still. If you were to come to Tokyo by day, you would probably not notice. But psychologically, it's having an incredible impact on people's... That's right. That's right. It has changed considerably. And I'll tell you, in my own jazz club and restaurant on Saturday of this week, we are organizing a rally, a live DJ party, an event simply to stimulate the spiritual, the inspiration and the return to spirituality here in Japan, and get people's moods up out of the doldrums and get them to look forward to resume their lives and do everything they can to rebuild, endure, and move on in a small way. So we're having a big event, and I will stream that live on Ustream. That will be on Saturday night here, Japan time, and we're hoping to get scores of people here to just raise a toast to the deceased and pledge to do whatever they can in their own individual lives to work on the recovery here. But to answer your direct question, in Tokyo, you wouldn't recognize it. It's at night. Lights are down to half level. Even here where I live, 400 kilometers away, 300 kilometers away from ground zero, at night, the convenience stores, the gasoline stands, don't put the lights on their signs. My restaurant as well. We're half lit as a measure everybody's doing to conserve energy in this crisis. So it's had an effect nationwide. Exactly. 8:42 a.m. on what day is this now? Wednesday. That's right. Yes. The best way to get us on an ongoing basis is go to the Ustream. That's USTREAM, Ustream.com, or Ustream TV. Is something like Facebook, rather something like YouTube. If your listeners aren't aware of it, it is a streaming live webcam kind of service, and we use it to disseminate information on a live basis. So we'll have our cameras up in the club on Saturday night, and people can enjoy with us to raise the spirits of Japan. That's our mission, and also call for the shutdown of the Hamaoka nuclear plant, and call for more open information and reporting on the part of the TEPCO company and the government as to let people know exactly what's going on. And we will introduce various ways to contribute to the Japan Red Cross as well. I appreciate that, and spread the word. Keep praying for Japan. We're in the belly of the beast, as it were, but you know, I've never seen a more resilient, tough people when it comes to working together for a common cause than the people of Japan. Yes, I remember. Yes, indeed. And you know, Gus, I've been here almost 35 years now, and there's been an outpouring of concern and care from loved ones from back home in the United States, and friends of friends on the social media, on Facebook and whatnot, and people are urging me, why don't you just come home? Why don't you just come home? And I have to remind them, I am home. That's right. I've got two older daughters that are living in Southern California right now, and I've got one college student, a freshman, who just returned from the States from his initial phase of his post-secondary education, and one high school daughter student here left. So, I'm sorry. Well, interesting. Japanese refer, because my wife is Japanese and I'm an American, Japanese referred to our children as half. But 20 years ago, I went on a national broadcast doing a documentary and said, don't refer to our children or any children of an international marriage as half. That's an ethnocentric reference from the Japanese. That means that they're half Japanese. I corrected them. I said, from now on, refer to our children as doubles, because their dad's American, their mom's Japanese, they speak English and Japanese. Your kids only speak Japanese, and they're members of an island nation. Nobody outside Japan speaks Japanese for all practical purposes. So it's kind of changed, and all of a sudden children of international marriages are now rock stars here in Japan. So we've done well. That's right. That's right. But you know, I'm a homeboy from Omaha, Nebraska. I came up in the civil rights era of the late 50s and 60s, and so whatever we have and whatever we are and whatever we represent, we contribute to the Japanese to flatten their learning curve about being citizens of the global community. There's so much still, in many respects, isolated and think of themselves as being unique as members of an island nation, but that's changing rapidly, and it's changed a lot since we've been here as foreigners who've been here for a long time. So,
In the town of Hamaoka, at the Hamaoka Nuclear Power Facility. Thank you very much for joining us, and stay tuned.
no question about it. I live here, Gus, because I love this civilization. I love this society, and it is a great place to live and raise children. I never received so many accolades until my son went back to join his American relatives to attend school, and they said, "Oh my God, how did you did such a good job raising this kid?" I said, "No, it is his environment that he was raised in that created him and made him such a great young man." So. Yes. Well, absolutely, because there's some extreme cultural differences. But if you recognize, I teach Japanese culture to incoming foreigners who want to do business here and access this incredible market, and coexist and cooperate with the Japanese. And one of the things I tell them is, forget about whatever you think you know about Japan. Just open your mind and your heart. Try to learn and understand how they communicate, and that will eliminate the frustration that we normally would get by dealing with them sometimes, because it's completely different from what we're used to in the West. Yes, sir. Yeah, appreciate that. That is the Hamaoka nuclear plant. We want to draw international attention to this crisis. It's a crisis just waiting to happen. Well, if that happens, I'm downwind of it. I'm within the disaster zone if it should happen, and if that does happen, please make one of your yachts available to me and my family, because we'll be coming that way. Okay. It's our pleasure, and we thank you very much for keeping your eyes focused on Japan and allowing us to get the word out. I got to tell you, although I'm here inside the belly of the beast, locally here on the front lines, so to speak, this is a global story, and it has global implications. So we really need, America needs to take notice, and the people need to reinvestigate the efficacy of using nuclear power as a energy source. Yes, I'll be doing some reports in the future about the potential of renewable energy sources. You know, Japan is one of the leaders in solar energy. I mean, people out here where I live have solar panels on their roofs, and 80% of the energy is coming from the sun. So it's something, it's not infeasible, yeah. Absolutely. Oh, incredible! Like nothing people from the West have ever seen. Totally, and you know, you got to remember this is an island nation with limited land resources and limited natural resources. So they do very well. Okay, absolutely. In regards to your guest there, and appreciate his input as well, and also to the listeners of WXTS. Gus James, appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right. Call us anytime. So there you have it. That was my good friend Gus James. We were broadcasting live simultaneously here on Japan Journal and on WXTS FM in the Virgin Islands. On a program called Searching for Solutions. And that's exactly what we're doing here in Japan, searching for solutions about this crisis that we're confronted with right now. So that's going to do it for this edition of Japan Journal. Thank you very much for watching. I'm your host, Mal Adams, coming to you from Kakiao City in Shizuoka Prefecture, just downwind of the Hamaoka nuclear power plant, where we say, shut it down.